Hola, Ship Familia. Welcome back to the latinXfactor partnership dedicated webinar where we highlight our partners and learn about the organization. I'm Dr. Dora Renaud here at Ship National and want to welcome you to the show. So tonight our show is Getting Paid to Play with CNA, using your analytical skills in wargaming and humanitarian missions. So CNA is the Center for Naval Analysis. And tonight you will learn about how you can use your STEM skills in a non-traditional setting to make a positive difference through your work and community. We will hear from CNA leaders about the variety of potential career paths available and take a deep dive into the areas of wargaming and humanitarian work. So as we continue celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, I want to welcome this award-winning CNA diverse team. We are very excited to have you all join us today. Jay, I'm going to pass it over to you for some introductions.
Thank you, Dora. First off, thank you to all of you, Dora, as well as the SHIP organization for having us here today at the latinXfactor webinar. My name is Jay Lawanag, and I am in the Human Resources Office at CNA. I've been there for about 2 years now, and it's been a very dynamic and exciting experience. I'm joined today with two of my colleagues, Dr. Christopher Ma, who's part of our wargaming efforts, and he's the director of our program in that area, and also Dr. Vero de Allende, and she works with our humanitarian missions and efforts in that arena. So we're excited to have both of them here. The bulk of the presentation is going to be talking a little bit about their experiences and what they do at CNA, as well as how they got there within their careers. So I'm going to turn it to the next slide here. So as I mentioned, this is just our agenda for today. Today, when we are talking about CNA, it's just going to be a brief overview where you'll learn about the dynamic, smart, and fun people that we work on cutting edge opportunities that are out there. That's why we use the word getting paid to play. Chris, when he speaks about our wargaming efforts, you'll see that they are doing a lot of things that are making an impact on getting our sponsors ready for their missions, for critical work, and using the concepts of game, which can be like play, and allowing our sponsors to learn in situations prior to actually getting into the real life efforts. And then on the other side, Dr. Vero de Allende will talk about the work that we're doing that's really making a difference in the world with our humanitarian assistance and our disaster response missions. So she'll focus in that area on top of all the variety of different things that we do at CNA. And we'll hopefully have some time for questions and answers, and hopefully stay connected, not only today, but even beyond. So just quick overview of CNA. We're a nonprofit organization, so we're not a new organization. We've been around since World War II. We have two areas that are part of our federally funded Research and Development Center, which is our Center for Naval Analysis and our Institute for Public Research. Having 75 plus years with the government and approximately 700 research and professional staff. You'll see in the picture over there, that's our headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. Very cosmopolitan area, a lot of opportunities to do things, and very close to the city in D.C. So as I mentioned, we started in World War II. So we're not just the organization that just came out there, and sometimes people say, oh, are you the Association for the Certified Nurses Association? No, we're not the Certified Nurses Association. We are CNA. And CNA has been around since World War II, where we've been embedded with sailors and Marines in every single war since then. And it's a privilege for us and an honor for us to be able to help the Navy, the Marines, and all of our different sponsors to impact, game-changing situations where we're helping them solve problems and scenarios that they're faced with every day. So we've continued to grow throughout the years, and we've been actually hiring a lot in this past year, where we've grown our Institute for Public Research, which began in 1993. That area was set up to serve as our non-defense agencies, a majority being such as the Federal Aviation Administration, where we do hire aerospace type engineers and all different types of engineers, systems engineers, our Health and Human Services area, as well as FEMA. And again, together with our CNA area, that makes up CNA. So now with our staff, this just gives you a really quick overview of the academic fields that our staff have. And as you can see, I know the majority of the individuals in SHIP are with engineering backgrounds or STEM backgrounds. We hire all types of individuals and all types of engineers. Chris, for example, has a background in material science and engineering. We've hired systems engineers, aerospace engineers, computer scientists areas, biomedical engineers, mechanical engineers, and so forth, and you name it. So pretty much every single type of field within the engineering area we've looked at and recruited in the past. So the Center for Naval Analysis, again, what we are really, our analysis is our product. We do independent and objective analysis. And so what I put over here is I put a picture of Top Gun. You might be like, why does he have a picture of Top Gun? Well, it's one of my favorite movies, but also the individual who was part of the love interest in the actual Hollywood movie of Tom Cruise. Take away the love interest. That individual was actually Chris, not Chris, what was her name? Christine Fox. Christine Fox. Christine Fox was an actual CNA employee and a civilian that character was modeled after. And so if you watch that movie, or if you've watched that movie and you see the work that she does, she's actually out in the field and she's actually providing research and expertise and objective data to help solve problems and make the military work better. And so that was just a really easy example. If you haven't watched the movie, I'd encourage you to watch it. And Christine went on to do a lot of great things, and she was actually even the acting Deputy Secretary of Defense, which is one of the highest honors in the military area. And so that's just an example of some of the work that we do. And this just gives you a little bit of an overview of some of the different areas. We do have a China and Indo-Pacific Security Affairs Division. So if you have language skills, whether it be Chinese, Russian, and even Spanish with the Latin American work that we do, we often look for those skills and those opportunities. We have our Operational Warfighting Division, and Chris will be talking more about what we do with wargaming, and as well as strategic policy and planning. And on the other side, the cross-divisional program areas, what's become really big, as many of you probably know, is the data science area. I'm looking at people with skills in data science, data analytics, to really, again, make an impact in the work that we do, as well as our cyber research program and getting into artificial intelligence as well. So our Institute for Public Research, this is where we've done the work with emergency management and operations, public health, justice and research and innovation. And one of the interesting things that we've been doing recently is working with police and with the body cams. And not only, how can we make it safe for them, but also make it safe for our citizens out there as we make our communities safer for everyone. Also, if you remember when we were first with the pandemic, and there was a Navy ship that had a COVID outbreak, several of our analysts we're in the forefront of really gathering data and providing data and working with the military to help alleviate that situation and also ensure that we can mitigate a response if we had to in the future. So with our areas of expertise, there's a lot, and I'm not going to go into every single one of these, but we have, as I mentioned, the data science, cybersecurity, the wargaming piece, as you see here, and Chris will speak more about that area. And then we also have foreign policy in different militaries. As I mentioned, the areas in Russia, there's in Korea, China, the Middle East, Latin America, Africa, and so forth. And then Dr. De Allende will talk about the humanitarian assistance and disaster responses that we have done, which is a very, very interesting work and very impactful work that we do. And so one of the great things that we have at CNA is we have an opportunity for our staff and our employees to be part of the field. And we have a field engagement program where our employees, and Chris as well as Vero, have both been out in the field during their careers at CNA, where you get an opportunity to really make an impact in the operations that are out there. And you learn firsthand from the people, the data that's out there, and the problems that we're trying to solve. I mean, from what I've heard, with some of the people that have went out into the field, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to really get close to the different problems that are out there and really learn from a lot of bright and dynamic people in many different areas. So this gives you a little bit of a map of some of the military installations and the field locations that we've been at, and we currently still have individuals at. And so it's a great opportunity, again, to learn more and to actually be hands-on out in the field. So what about our culture? We're tremendously mission-oriented for public service. We're a nonprofit. So what's great about being a nonprofit is we reinvest the money that we make back into our organization to continue to grow and to do, again, good work for our sponsors. The importance of data. Data is the key. That is our lifeblood of getting that data and working as a one CNA as a whole, collaborating together. And we value different and diverse views. That's why we're out and we're constantly looking to recruit the best talent that's out there, people from a variety of different backgrounds of education, heritage, and so forth. And we really want the best and the brightest to be at CNA. And so what's next? These are the different areas that we hire for individuals in political science, engineering, as I mentioned, in all the different areas. We got physics, math, social sciences, and computer sciences. And due to the nature of our work, we do require that that you be a U.S. citizen and have the ability to get a security clearance. Again, it's just based on the work that we do with our sponsors. And then competitive compensation and benefits as well. So before I turn it over to Chris to talk about our exciting work in wargaming and his background and his experiences, I wanted to ask if anyone has any questions in the chat, and/or if you just want to go on mute and ask a question. I'll pause right now to see if anyone has any questions. Okay, great. Well, now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Chris. He's a colleague that I've had the pleasure to work with, and he's got a great background and he brings a lot of strength to CNA, and he'll be talking about his experience with the wargaming area.
Thank you, Jay. I'm Christopher Ma. I am the Research Program Director for the Wargaming team. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about wargaming. I know when I first joined CNA and the wargaming team, I didn't know exactly what that was. So I'll break that down a little bit for you. But before that, I'll talk some more about my background, sort of how I got where I am today and the different career choices that I had along the way. So next slide. So I grew up in Austin, Texas, raised by a single mother. She knew that education was the key to sort of opportunity. Her and the rest of my family on my mother's side, they had only graduated high school, so I was going to be the first person to actually go to college on my mother's side. So I was good in math and I was good in science. And when I was looking at undergrad schools, I found this little college called Coe College in Iowa, a liberal arts school. And I chose it because they had a really good physics program. It allowed me to explore, move away, try new things. And one thing in particular was they had an undergraduate research program. So that allowed me to actually get my hands dirty and do research. I'm one of those people who doesn't learn as well just by reading, right? Or just theoretical. I need to get my hands dirty. It's probably one of the reasons why I majored in physics, right? It's about experimentation. And so I spent 4 years there. I got a major in physics, a minor in math. And as I was sort of finishing up my college career, I had two professors that say, hey, Chris, have you thought about going to grad school, right? And honestly, at that point in my life, grad school was not something that was even on my radar, right? Grad school seemed like one of those things that was far out. out there that other people do, not me. And I didn't have a model growing up of anyone that had higher education, undergrad, let alone graduate school. But they sort of pushed me, just, hey, just apply, see what happens. And so I did. I applied to a variety of different schools, graduate schools, different programs across the country, and I got into several. At the end of the day, I decided to go ahead and go to grad school at Georgia Tech. The idea of like putting off with the real world and getting a real job at the end of my undergrad sounded appealing. Just sort of defer real life and still go to school. So I did. So I went to Georgia Tech for 5 years. I got my PhD there in material science and engineering. I did research in nanotechnology, which was back then in early 2000s. That was sort of the buzz. Much sort of like how AI and cyber is currently like, the in vogue thing. You could hear it on commercials, televisions, movies, right? They talk about nanotechnology, kind of how now they kind of throw out cyber or AI or machine learning in movies. So that was sort of the wave that I rode back then. And so I graduated after 5 years, a good time. I got my PhD, and then I looked for my first job. And next slide. So for my first job, I settled on a place called DARPA. For those of you that maybe you've heard about it, it's the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It's kind of like the R&D department, the research and development department for the Department of Defense. They do things that are very like futuristic, way down the line, 15, 20 years. They're credited with coming up with things like stealth technology, drones, the internet, GPS. Right, all those things came out of DARPA and eventually made its way to the military and then eventually to the consumer. And so I was there for 7 years. One of the things that I really enjoyed about it was we got to work on really cool sort of science fiction type things. As an example, I worked on something called HIMEMS, Hybrid Integrated Electromechanics. What that was essentially, because of my nanotechnology, they wanted me to shrink microchips to be really, really small. We'll take these microchips and we implant them into insects. So if you look at the pictures here, on the top right and the bottom left, you have a beetle at the top and a moth in the bottom that have microchips in it. And so the idea was, if you implant these microchips in these bugs, you run electric current through it, maybe you can get it to stimulate its muscles. And so you can actually get it to move. So you can get a remote control bug, essentially. And oh, by the way, since we're talking about the military, why don't we put a microphone on there? Or why don't we put a camera on there? So you have this remote control insect that can actually watch or look at, listen to things and send that information back, right? So for very clandestine type things. Another interesting project that I got to work on was the next generation GPS. So GPS, right, the global positioning system, right? It's essentially a constellation of a bunch of satellites that are out in space. But the satellites are big, right? There's, the size of a room, the size of a large table, a conference table, and they're heavy. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it used to be something like, it costs around $30,000, maybe a little bit more, $30,000 per pound to get anything into space, right? So if you're talking about something the size of a table, the size of a conference table, that's gonna be big, that's gonna be heavy, right? That means it's gonna be expensive, not only to build, but just to shoot it off into space. So the idea with DARPA was like, okay, well, what do we shrink this? What if we can use nanotechnology to take this thing that's the size of a conference room, or sorry, the size of a conference table or a large desk, and shrink it to the size of a basketball, right? And if I can do that, then maybe it'll cost less. We can put more of them up there. And so that was part of my job, was to sort of come up with these help develop the new technologies that would shrink these large satellites into being very small. And those are the pictures in the middle. Those are chip scale atomic clock and a micro accelerometer. And those are the base components of parts of the components of a satellite, a GPS satellite. So I enjoyed my time at DARPA. I was there for 7 years. But one of the things was the technology was so far in the future. Like, I would be working on something now and it wouldn't become a real thing to the military for another 10 or 15 years. And the general public wouldn't even see it for like 5 or 10 years after that. And I wanted to see the impact. I wanted to really have to be able to see today, or within at least the next month or 2 or 6 months, what my work was actually going to do and how it would hopefully change the world. And so when doing that, I sort of, again, I applied for a bunch of different jobs, and in that I came across CNA. Next slide. So, Jay sort of described CNA. I tend to tell people, my friends and my family, CNA is kind of like a think tank for the Department of Navy. That isn't exactly accurate, but it sort of gets at the heart of what CNA wants, which is they want to use our big brains to solve problems, right? And so a think tank is the best short set of words that I can think of that help elicit that sort of dynamic, right? We use our big brains to solve difficult, hard problems. The Navy, the Marine Corps, they tend to think about problems in a very anecdotal kind of way, right? I experienced this, so this must be how it is. But it's our job as CNA to say, okay, yes, you experienced it, but is that an outlier? Is that the average? Does everyone experience that? So we use our brains to rigorously look, using the scientific method, to look at a problem and to be able to break it up into small pieces in order to understand it and then to analyze it. And so I got to do that with my first couple of years at CNA. I have some examples of the things that I worked on. So if you look at the pictures on the right, the top right corner and the bottom left corner, that's actually a robot. It's called Big Dog. It's essentially an autonomous robot that walks around with platoons of Marines. And the idea behind that is it's this big, essentially walking suitcase where you can put things in it and take things off of it. It can carry things. And so part of my job when I was working with the Marines was to say, okay, how is the best way that we can implement this or use it, employ it with our Marines so they can accomplish the mission? Is it going to be more trouble than it's worth? Is it going to actually be what we call a force multiplier, right? Having one is going to increase the effectiveness of that unit by 1 or 2 or 3-fold. The other things that I got to work on, I got to be out on a Navy ship out in the middle of the ocean for about a month, where we looked at different tactics of how can we fight better at sea, right? Very few people get to go on Navy ships and actually where they're actually out, maybe there's an old one in a museum that you walk into, but this was an active ship. We're out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Very few people get to do that kind of stuff that are civilians. CNA affords us that opportunity. And lastly, another thing I got to work on that I thought was pretty cool was there was a new type of road vehicle that the Marines were thinking about using. And so they said, hey, Chris, can you design a set of experiences to figure out what are the best mission sets for this? What are the best use of this? Should we use it in this case, but not in this case? So I spent about 6 weeks out in the California desert with the Marines, and I created a bunch of experiments to run, and we ran them over and over again so I could get a statistical data set. And then I came back to the office and I did the analysis, and I was able to give them a definitive answer of here are the things that it's good for, here are the things that it's not. So that's the kind of work that I did when I first joined CNA. One of the nice things about CNA is it allows you to sort of, if you have the initiative, you can try a few different types of topical areas. And so after I'd done this, I decided to go to try the Wargaming group. So next slide. So with the Wargaming group, actually, I say I went there. Actually, they were like, hey, Chris, you seem smart. Why don't you come work for us? I was like, sure, no problem. But when I joined, I was like, what is wargaming, right? Am I just going to play Risk all day? I don't understand. And we do play a ton of games in order to do what we do. But when most people think of wargaming, and I have a picture of it over on the right, when most people think of wargaming, the traditional wargaming is a force on force, right? So you have this big map, and you have these little pieces here. Here in the picture, they're blocks, and each block represents maybe an aircraft or a ship. And you have one side versus the other side, and you sort of almost like chess, but right, you're moving pieces along the board to figure out how can you destroy the other or take over or have a conflict with the other team. That's what a traditional war game is. It's that sort of map pieces, force on force action. But at the heart of it, what a war game really is, it's an immersive simulation, right? So what does that mean? The best example that I like to use for people coming to wargaming, it's like Monopoly, right? So Monopoly at its heart is a game, but it's really just a tool that's trying to teach the players that monopolies are bad, right? So as a player, you're immersed in it. You're a real estate person, and you're trying to buy your real estate. You're trying to buy your hotels and your houses and get your income, right? And you know from playing it and wanting to try to win that if you have to buy property, you have to buy property quick, because if you don't, then your opponents may buy property. If they have more property and you don't have very much, can't have income, right? You're going to lose the game, and that's bad. And so that's what a wargaming at the heart is. It's basically an immersive simulation that sort of balances abstraction versus reality. And what does that mean, right? Well, in buying real estate, right, you don't just give the bank $500 and you get a hotel, right? There's a lot more complex in the real world about complex things about permits and loans and insurance and all that kind of stuff. But that isn't important for what the game wants to solve, what the game wants to teach you. So as a war game designer, what we have to do is balance that. How much information is really critical for the players to know? Can we not overload them so they think it's still fun and they're engaged in the game, but they're also learning, right? So why is this important to the military? Well, games allow us or allow the military to be in this environment where the stakes feel very real, right? When you play a game, you want to win, right? You may sweat a little bit, you get nervous, and when you roll the die because you really want an outcome, right? That immersion simulates that experience of if they happen to be in a war, right? Or if they happen to be in a situation where they're in a conflict. It allows them to put themselves in a safe environment where they can learn, where they can make mistakes, where they can try new things. And if they lose, no lives are lost, right? No money is really expended and can't come back, right? It's a safe environment to understand about what scenarios are possible, what things they can do. So what are the different areas that we've looked at CNA? Well, I have a couple listed at the bottom. Combat operations, that's that force on force that I was talking about earlier. Logistics, right? Like Amazon has to figure out how are they going to get their package from point A to point B. How many trucks is it going to take? How many distribution centers do they need to have worldwide? All that stuff can actually be built into a game where you can say, okay, as Amazon, I only have $10 million. Where am I going to spend that $10 million? Am I going to spend it on lots of trucks, but only one distribution center? Am I going to spend it on smaller trucks, but more distribution centers, right? Those are all things that you can play and you can learn in order and to understand the decision-making process, risk assessment in wargaming. Cyber, we work a lot with the cyber community because that's an up-and-coming field. We've done some stuff with cyber, which I'll talk about in the next slide. And then national defense policy, right? What should the United States, how should the United States develop its own policy against bad actors, right? If North Korea is saying, hey, we want to launch a nuke over to the United States, how should the U.S. respond? Should the U.S. respond by showing a force and putting a bunch of people there? Should the U.S. respond by saying, hey, you know what? We don't care what you're saying. You're not a real threat. That policy is important, right? Because it affects not only us in North Korea, but all of our allies that are out in the Pacific. So we can wargame that, try different scenarios and see how that plays out so that we can make the best decision, or we can allow our senior leadership to make the best decisions possible. So for some more specific examples, let me go to the next slide. So earlier I mentioned the force on force, right? So one of the things we've done is in the past is sort of take technologies. We took a missile platform that said, hey, Chris, CNA, we have this new missile platform that's whiz bang. It's got all these cool performance. It's going to outperform the last generation. What's the best way we could use it? Should we put it up front? Should we put it in the back? Should we get 7 of them? Should we get 30 of them? Right? What are the things we should do in order to make this new whiz bang thing as effective as possible? And that was a war game that we designed for them, and we're actually currently writing the paper for it right now to share the results. Cyber, right? We're working with the Air Force. They said, hey, in the military, and they even in television, right? People think when I want something cyber to happen, right? It's just a click of a button, like almost imagine like a big red button that says cyber, and I just push it, right, and it happens. But truthfully, right, cyber is like a video game, right? If you want a video game, it takes years of development. It takes man hours, right? If you want something to happen, you have to figure out what are the things that I need to put in place years from now in order to do that. And so what we did for the Air Force and their cyber warfare division was like, okay, tell us all the different things that you want cyber to do. Okay, we're going to play a game. We're going to what we call backcasting. We're going to figure out here's what you should have done 6 months ago, 2 years before that, and then 3 years before that. Here are all the people would have taken in order to make sure that you could get that one thing that you need right here, right now. with your cyber button. And so they're now using that information in order to build their cyber program so that when they fight in the future, they have all the equipment they need. War games can also be great for training, right? Our Navy and Marines and the military in general, right? The suicide rate can be very high because it's so stressful. So the Navy sort of saw this as being a problem. And so they reached out to CNA saying, hey, what can we do to help our sailors? And so they came to us and we designed a game that we play with commanding officers that says, hey, let's take a year in your life. And we're gonna give you a bunch of events, right? The idea is that what we did was we implanted little red flags here and there that things would happen, like a sailor would come late to his job, three times in a week, or maybe we heard that they were having money troubles, right? He got into a lot of fights, or he or she got into a lot of fights with somebody, right? What we did was we put these red flags, and then at the end of the game, we said, hey, look, here are all the red flags. If you look at this red flag, and this red flag, that means that they maybe have alcohol abuse. Maybe they're having suicidal thoughts. So the idea is we were able to train these commanders to look in their real life now. And when they saw these red flags of maybe indicators, put that knowledge together and say, oh, I should go talk to the Marine, or I should go talk to the sailor before something because he may be in a bad place or she may be in a bad place. And we want to help them before they do anything bad or any destructive behavior. So that's another example. And then, not only is it all about fighting, right? We also talk about the military can be a large helping in the humanitarian aid and disaster response. Whenever there's a earthquake or a typhoon or a hurricane, right? The military can be sometimes brought in to help with airlift, with different commodities. And so the military knows that when they do that, they tend to sort of step on people's toes, and maybe they're not integrating as well as they could. So they came to us and they asked us, hey, how can we better integrate? How can we better help other U.S. agencies or non-government organizations in order to make sure that we're getting the things to the right people, helping in the right way, and not being like a bull in a china shop and creating more disasters. And actually, Vero will actually talk a little bit about that and touch on a lot of other types of humanitarian aid and disaster, humanitarian assistance and disaster response that CNA does. So that's my talk. I'll take a pause here, and if anyone has any questions that they can put in the chat or want to ask now, otherwise, I'd be more than happy to take a few now.
Thank you, Chris. Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Es un placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. Before Chris talk about simulations, I'm going to talk to you about the actual field work that I have conducted doing impact assessments of the humanitarian missions of the Navy. But before I touch on that subject, I also want to tell you a little bit about myself and what I have done before joining CNA. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I was born and grew up in Guanajuato, Mexico. This is a picture of my beautiful hometown. As you can see with the cathedral, the back is the University of Guanajuato. But I studied actually in the south of Mexico in the Universidad de las Américas in Puebla. I studied economics, and after that I work as a part of the economic group of the Mexican Minister of Trade for a while, and I also trained as a simultaneous interpreter translator. English, Spanish languages has always been something that I really really have been an easiness for it, and I also studied French and actually Japanese during my undergrad. So my career really shot up when I got a Fulbright scholarship to come to the US and do my PhD at the Ohio State University in Development and International Economics. During that time also, I tried to do several, work during the summers. And after that, after graduating, I worked with the World Bank as an external consultant in the actually Latin American financial development sector. And later I became an adjunct professor at American University and Georgetown, also teaching economic economic development of Latin America. And I just want to show you also this beautiful picture below my hometown, because that was my view for my dorm in my university in Mexico. That's the active volcano, which is called the Popocatépetl. And that big mountain then actually is a pyramid. On the other side of that mountain is uncovered, and you can see the steps of the pyramid, and the top of the pyramid, it does that church. So as you can imagine, I kind of miss that beautiful view. Next slide, please. So let me tell you first, why CNA? Well, you know what? I've been able to use my academic and, like I said, and professional skills to really have made a real impact. Like some of them are obviously the humanitarian missions, but there's also other type of work where you really see where the Navy, takes the recommendations that we do, and then and see those recommendations being implemented in future years, like Chris said, right? I mean, it's something that you can actually see the effects of our work, and that's highly satisfying. Also, because there's an opportunity to explore new professional settings, and every time is continue learning, because each project can be very different one year from another. So you don't do the same things over and over, and that's also very challenging and satisfying. And at the same time, you deal right with the unexpected. I also have been, flew into the aircraft carrier, the USS George W. Bush. That's a photo of me on top of, next to the tower of communications, and it is really quite an amazing job. Not necessarily you know everything, of course. I had really no idea. I was supporting a senior analyst, and it's like, I can do this, I will learn, I will grow, and you deal with the unexpected. And at the same time, why not, right? You have this great opportunity to continue doing field work. I also was part of a big group which were doing monitoring and evaluation studies in Southeast Asia. So that was another picture underneath there with the Indonesian Coast Guard headquarters. And you learn so much from every single place and people you meet, which is absolutely just wonderful. Next slide, please. So now, so CNA, we have been actually involved in several of the impact evaluations, as I mentioned before, since 2008. And not only in Latin America, all over Latin America, but also West Africa. And so let me just tell you, when the Comfort, which is the only afloat advanced traumatic life support facility in the world, the hospital ships, it has 1,000 beds and 11 surgery suites, arrived at a port in, obviously these are very, areas where the people are in higher need of all sorts of medical issues. Also, they come the CBs, which are called, these are the Navy engineers, C as in ocean and B as the little animal. I just love that name. So they come and actually they build schools, clinics, right, water wells in all the countries in all these regions. And at the same time, of course, they have all these medical readiness exercises. They actually evaluate all all this is a huge logistical support that also the host nation is involved and other U.S. agencies, and they actually identify, right? I mean, what patients need surgery. They fly the patients to the hospital ships. They fly them back, and then once a huge team, right, consisting of doctors, nurses, dentists, and they all provide all general and special clinical public health services, and also these missions. Many of these missions also provide with partner nations. They actually can host many of their military doctors from these nations. They are ship riders, so they actually are part of that medical team, and they can also go from one country to another, learning and being trained with the American doctors. So all these, like I said, is highly coordinated, and everybody is involved in all these different missions. The latest one was in October in 2018. The Comfort departed for an 11-week mission in Latin America, and their primary mission was to assist countries in the region, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Honduras, that receive refugees from Venezuela mainly. So like I said, all these missions, when the Comfort leaves, then it's another colleague and myself doing the impact evaluation. And as you can see from this photo, for example, at the right, the top right, that was the school. This is in Tumaco in Colombia, very rural, isolated area with very vulnerable populations to not only to economic impacts from the country itself, obviously, but also from disaster and climate change and all this, which is really getting more and more severe across the years. And now this is the school that they have, right? With just a tarp and the kids outside. And then at the bottom, you can see what it was accomplished after the cities came and built that beautiful school. They named the school Kearsarge because at that time it was actually the USS Kearsarge who came and built that gorgeous school. And this is the other photo is actually the inside of a photo of the inside of the Comfort. This is nice and clean, and obviously that doesn't happen when all these missions are being performed. Now, let me tell you, I have used obviously quantitative and qualitative research methods. You can actually, with the quantitative or statistical analysis, we do polling, and the qualitative methods, which I name the colors behind the numbers. It's really, doing interviews, doing focus groups, really understanding and talking to people from the kid who got, a eye surgery to all the way up to the Minister of Defense of a country. And so all these assessments, come, we finish the study, we do recommendations, policy recommendations, we do best practices, and all that is taken into account for the next mission. Now I mentioned also, have been conducting assessment and monitoring and evaluation studies. And another great area which I've been able to jump a little bit beside these projects is, being on the opportunity to be a Women, Peace and Security Advisor at the Department of Defense from the last year. So as you can see, it's quite a varied projects along my 14-year career at CNA. Next slide, please. So now, what is this, this work? How is it impacted? So as you can see, it's really to utilize these resources, right? These are huge logistical coordination and of course, the funding that comes along all these missions. It has to be obviously how are they going to be all these more effective, right, decisions and acquire that information. So we help the policymakers, planners, and implementers get all this information, all these analyses that we do, and to make effective decisions about the strategic programming and operations. And not only that, but we never give opinions, obviously. We always base everything on field work, on empirical data and analysis. So we always, at the same time, we're not afraid of telling, right, to high power many times, no, this doesn't work like that. It works like this. So that's why we try to help. And also, again, right, best practices is to tell them what works well. But lessons learned is how to better address the needs of all these vulnerable populations. So here is also, again, a picture of somebody getting an eye surgery. At the bottom are all these kids that when I said, does anybody have a question? They all raised their hands and wanted to ask me, how is it that I was there, how I was helping, and everybody, saw such a beautiful, satisfying work looking at all these happy faces from children. So next slide. I think that is my presentation. I know I think we still have enough time. If somebody has a question, a comment, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Vero. There was a question about internships, and if we do have internships, I did place on the chat our careers page. We do have an internship that is currently open, and it is the application process begins now all the way through November, and then we will be bringing in folks for interviews in January and February timeframe and making decisions by March for a paid summer internship. And that internship you'll see on our site. There's a video, I believe, that talks a lot about it. It's an opportunity to get real life experience and again, connect with some amazing people, both on the CNA side and with our sponsors. And there was also a comment too from one of our actual VPs who thankfully has joined us, but and I think it's a very important comment, especially for the audience here. And I know that Dora had mentioned that some of you will be watching this post today's session at university gatherings and so forth. And I think what this VP mentioned is very important, especially if you're still a current student. It's a note that STEM graduates like yourselves in the engineering side and so forth, with the willingness to be cross-disciplinary. So it's easy to think, okay, well, I was X type of engineer, so I'm just going to focus on that area, or here's the one area that I want to work in. But those that are willing to be cross-disciplinary and look at the different areas are real force multipliers. One of his research managers in our strategy program is a physical chemist, and he's a high impact player now in the level of national security decision-making, just by being able to be cross-disciplinary and to utilize skills and learn different skills as well, bringing his or her expertise onto the table. So that's, I think, a very important notion for all students to think about as you pursue your future careers.
Jay, I do have a question for Chris and for Vero. Can you share like one of your projects that has really stuck with you, that one of your favorite projects that was like a huge impact and just kind of stayed at the top of your mind that really touched your heart? Can you both share something?
Yeah, I'll go first. So I think I mentioned earlier, right, as a trained as a physicist, right, I like getting my hands dirty. And I'm very extroverted, so I like working with people. So one of the projects that I got to work on was the Marines came to CNA and it said, hey, you know, we're known for being marksmen, right? To being able to shoot things really well, right? But we're not good at hitting things that are moving, and most things move. So how can we do that better, right? And so I was like, okay, what do you mean by better, right? Do you mean effective, efficient, and all that stuff? So I basically got together with I think 16 Marines for 2 weeks, and we got on the range, and we just shot weapons over and over again at some moving targets, back and forth. I got to shoot a little bit, which was both cool and frightening. But what I liked about it was it talked about change, right? As a consequence of that experiment, they actually changed the way the Marine Corps trains their Marines. They actually changed it wasn't actually doctrine, but they changed the teaching mechanisms and the requirements for it. So I actually was able to do something, and within, I think it was like 6 to 9 months afterwards, actually see a change in the way the military works, and that's going to affect Marines from that point on. And that was really cool to be able to see, like, actually how my work can directly contribute to things.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing, Chris. What about you, Vero?
Yeah, I have so many great examples, but the one that is really, really close to my heart is one that this is in the north of Colombia. We were in an, evaluating again, the CBs came and they built a school, and they built also a playground. They put a playground for this really, really poor community in the outskirts, in the middle of nowhere, in the north of Colombia. And for many, many years, these communities just grew, and the mayor, the governor never, pay attention, put resources. But also is not only the impact outside of what, is bringing the US Navy, but also because of that big mission, then finally the mayor of the city, and because it was a big, advertisement of it, then the whole community around came and helped to clean the whole little village, from other Colombians coming and helping, and seeing the Americans, right, working with the Colombians, just regular Colombians. I have to tell you, that was a huge sight, beautiful to see that finally, but you have to have that attention to bring at a political level and at also a community level. And that was really, really something.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing. I know our engineers don't just want a job. They want something that's really going to impact their community and worldwide. So as we think about some final thoughts, I'm wondering if you can, give some words of wisdom to our participants and think about, as they're finishing up their degrees and looking for that dream job. Why CNA?
I can go
for
first.
Anybody.
Yeah, I'll go. So I would say writ large, right? I think that sometimes the culture that we live in, right, it values homogeny, right? Sort of herd mentality. Everyone's kind of like each other, right? Everyone wants to sort of follow each other. And as a minority, I am less bad about it now, but when I was much younger, I always recognized that I was like one of only one person of color in a large room, right? Always feeling a little bit apart, right? I realized later in life, right, and something that I want to sort of share here, right, is that diversity, right, that being set apart, that lack of that difference is actually a really good thing, right? It's a really good thing at CNA and just general, because, right, if you're dealing with hard problems, you want someone who's going to come at it in a slightly different way, right? That's why we hire people that are mechanical engineers, chemists, sociologists, psychologists, right? Because we want people to attack these hard, nebulous problems with their different perspectives and be able to bring a different solution that maybe, the same type of person, the same type of engineer or physicist wouldn't have come up with by themselves. But it isn't true just in sort of problems, right? It's true in sort of how you attack a team, how you not attack, how you work in a team, right? How you function in a group, all that kind of stuff, right? And one of the things I hear sometimes my junior analysts like, well, I want to be exactly like that person, right? That's maybe a senior. And I tell them, no, right? I already have one of those guys, right? If you're exactly like them, that makes you automatically expendable, right? Because now I have two of you, I don't need two of you, I only need one of them, right? So the idea that we are different, the idea that we have different perspectives, different backgrounds, different trials and tribulations that has made us, that will help us, even though it doesn't feel like it, right? We feel like the outsider, but the truth of the matter is that sort of perspective is valued, should be valued more, I think, right? But it's absolutely valued within CNA. It's valued in when you have to deal with hard problems, particularly ones that are cross-divisional, that are cross-scientific areas. So that's what I would say. Actually embrace your uniqueness, because it's what gives you power. It's what gives you, separates you from other people, so that they need you because you're not like anyone else. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and Chris is spot on. I think the key is what I've noticed, I work in human resources, but when I look at our staff, you can be yourself. I think that's a unique thing about being in an organization that works with very high level officials and sponsors. You can challenge the different questions, and you don't have to have a fear that I've got to follow the path, or just like Chris said, the herd group, and everyone's got to be the same. So it's not like a typical consulting company. I have worked in consulting organizations where you are required to do something a certain way constantly. And that uniqueness, I think, again, is our value. It's our value proposition. It's what our sponsors look for us to have, those different ideas, those new views, that curiosity that's there. And as I mentioned earlier, it's an opportunity to learn different things. In a sense, it's almost like continuing to be in school. We have soapboxes, what we call soapboxes, where we have experts that are talking about what they did. And you see the interchange among the staff that are learning from each other and asking different questions and seeing like, wow, aha, Chris did it this way, Vero did this way. I never thought about that. And then you have that additional connection where we even do different social things together, where we get together to talk about different topics, talk about our issues that we might have. And so it's a real opportunity to just be who you are without any fear and the notions.
I agree with all with my what my colleagues have said, and I will also add we need Spanish speakers. We definitely are in the minority in that area. So I really encourage everybody to really look at the webpage, see the opportunities we have, or internship opportunities, and some several positions. So please go and look, take a chance, and go for it. We are really looking that diversity, and especially Spanish speakers.
Thank you all. Jay, I think you have one more slide.
This is just my contact information, and feel free to reach out to me, and I can connect you to both Chris and Vero, as well as others within CNA. I think we want you to stay connected. Again, as Dora mentioned, I know some people will be watching this post, the recording. Please do reach out, because we are genuinely want to meet you. We want to learn from you. We want you to contribute to things that we're doing. And even if you decide not to work at CNA, or if you're not hired by CNA, we're here to help you. I've hired many people in the engineering fields throughout my career, my 15+ year career in HR, from all different areas. And we're always here to help you. We want to see you succeed. I personally want to see people with Hispanic heritage continue to do well in our society, because we have unique experiences and a strong work ethic, in my opinion, that is valuable to any type of organization. So feel free to reach out to us. There's also a slide here where I'll leave it up for a while that has some of our social media that's out there, and our main webpage. And we're here for each and every one of you. We consciously made this partnership, again, to not only enhance our diversity, but also enhance our thinking, because we learn from all of you. And I know many of you are going to be going out to your convention. Thankfully for you all, hopefully everyone will be safe in Orlando, and to be back in person and to learn from all the various employers that are out there, the different opportunities that might fall. And ask yourself, like, and be open to trying different things. You might see a session that you might not have even thought about going to, and you might end up, that's going to transform your life. It's going to make something totally different. You might meet someone just like Chris or someone like Vero, who will be your future mentor. That'll take you far and help you succeed in every step of the way throughout your journey. So I definitely encourage you to stay in touch with each and every one of us, connect with us on LinkedIn, come visit us if you are in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I'll be happy to give you a tour of our building and meet with other staff that we have. And it's a fun place. Like we said, you get paid to play. We want you to enjoy your career. We want you to have a long career and do amazing things just like Chris and Vero have been doing for us.
Well, there you go, Ship Familia. You just have your personal invite to come to the CNA building. Well, please, Familia, join me in thanking our CNA partners. What an amazing show you provided tonight. I want to thank you again and extend the invitation to come to the convention and remind our participants tonight to register for the convention, November 10th to the 14th. We will be in person in Orlando. And my last reminder tonight that this recording, along with all the others, are found on our SHIP National YouTube page. So signing off from SHIP National, buenas noches, stay safe and well. Thank you all.
Muchas gracias. Buenas noches.